SOLIDWORKS 2021 has a huge set of new features and performance enhancements. Let's take a closer look at some of them right now. SOLIDWORKS Plastics 2021 has a number of useful feature enhancements directly driven from our user base. The first thing I want to call our attention to is that we now have the ability to handle multiple injection mold overmold situations. So if I want to add in a couple shots here, so I'll say I'm going to do a 2-shot for this mold, it's going to go ahead and let me define 2 different materials. You'll also notice, when we use our library, that we have over 300 new material options straight out of the manufacturer information, just added in to the database in 2021. So one of the materials is going to be a hard plastic. So let me go ahead and find, let's see here, an ABS material from BASF. That'll work here. And then for my second material, I'm going to use a much softer plastic for that overmold. And I can just go ahead and use a recently used list, because as you use your study and use those materials, they'll just be available at your fingertips. So now I defined the 2 materials I want in my study. I just need to now assign the materials to the different domains in my study. So the part body will be that hard ABS plastic, and the overmold will be that softer touch material. We can model the entire cooling system virtually inside of Plastics 2021 by just using sketch geometry and then defining where we want things like cooling channels, for example. And I just basically type in the dimensional information for the element, and it just goes ahead and puts it in right on my sketch geometry. So new in 2021, we can do things like baffles. And again, just by typing in the parameters, it's going to go ahead and put that information in my virtual cooling setup, and we'll put in a couple of bubblers as well. All I got to do is, again, set the dimensions, set the locations in that sketch, and that's all I have to do. Now let's go ahead and put in our virtual mold parameters. So, obviously this is going to be made out of some kind of a tool steel. So what's that block going to look like, the overall block that we're going to use? So it's just, I could use the sliders here if I want to, or I can type in the dimensions for my block, and it's going to define that for the overall material. We'll add in the material for the cooling channel, being, in this case, it'll just be water. And then the virtual mold block is going to be a material. I'll use this tool steel here to define that. And the last thing I'm going to do here in this sort of basic setup is put in our injection molding points. And I'm going to put them on right in the geometry. In fact, you'll notice here, if you've been a plastics user for a while, I never did mesh this part here at all. I don't have to. I do it at the end when I run my study, like other simulation studies. So I can put the injection points right on the actual geometry of the model, which is much easier and more precise. Let's go ahead and just put in a couple of the details here, like the inlets and outlets for these cooling channels, as well as the clamping direction for my mold block. Now again, I'm doing this all in parameters. I don't have to model any of this in SOLIDWORKS geometry, which is a huge, huge time saver, not only to get my plastics injection mold study set up, because I don't have to model all that stuff, but also on the back end here, because the mesh is just going to be created by the system automatically based on those parameters versus it having to break down physical geometry that I model. So there's my cooling channels, there's my baffles and my bubblers there. You can see it's all been automatically meshed very nicely in the system. I didn't have to do any of that. So again, being able to do it virtual means that I can get to my solutions faster, as well as being able to change things in my virtual mold very easily to do what ifs. So as I watch this first shot go in of that hard ABS plastic, and then what's going to simulate that flow for the second shot, the overmold for that softer plastic. And I get all those parameters, again, just in the system and accurately modeling my entire mold without me having to model anything except for the part that's being molded. So some great new enhancements to SOLIDWORKS plastics simulation in 2021. So that's just some of what's new in SOLIDWORKS 2021. To find out more, go to www.gsc-3d.com today.